Hi, welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Angela Yeager.
And I'm Brian Michael. We're together on the show, but not together physically in the same space, but in the same universe anyway. Still in isolation. So loving it. So welcome to the show. It's not a special show; it's a regular show, but we have some interesting films for you. We have actually a couple of independent films. We have a tribute to Sean Connery, and another. Well, actually, they're all independent films. Well, that's the effects of COVID, folks. There's no mainstream films in theaters, so we're pretty much seeing all of the films that were supposed to be in theaters that we can now stream online or stream through your local independent theater. If you haven't yet explored that, certainly do try because there are ways to support your local independent theaters, whether it's buying popcorn or renting movies through them their website online. As always, if you like our show, please subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Twitter and all the other social media. We'll get to that at the end of the show. Our first movie is First Cow. This was a film that by Kelly Reichardt of Meeks Creek fame. She's an independent filmmaker. Angela, I know, has seen all of her movies at least twice. And it was supposed to come out earlier this year, but then, of course, COVID happened just before it was going to hit theaters, I believe, before it hit Salem anyway. So we didn't get to see it in the theaters. And so now, of course, we got to see it streaming on the internet. It's about two travelers who are on the run from a band of vengeful hunters in the 1820s Northwest, actually here in Oregon. Dream of striking it rich, but their tenuous plan to make their fortune on the frontiers comes to rely on a secret use of a landowner's prized dairy cow. It's literally the first cow that in that region that has come to, and they're using it to make biscuits, wonderful tasting biscuits because they're made with milk as opposed to just lard and flour. Doesn't sound like a very exciting film, does it? But of course, with Kelly Reichardt's filmmaking, this is just an intriguing film because you're pulled into the story ever so slowly because she's unafraid of showing people how they lace their shoes or put on boots or get ready for the morning. She's into the little things that most filmmakers skip over or edit out because we know what has happened. But she will take the time to show those things that I really appreciate, and you really like these characters. Of course, it's not the biggest, plot, but I really enjoyed it when they go and steal the milk. Of course, it's very, it's filled with a lot of tension. It's very suspenseful, and it's a film that I really enjoyed. It did not disappoint because this was the beginning. At the beginning of the year, there wasn't a lot of big films in terms of critics reviews. This was one of them, and I finally got to see it, which made me really happy. And I enjoyed this movie, and I'm looking forward to hearing what Angela has to say about it.
Yes, you're right, Brian. We're big fans of Kelly Reichardt in our household. It's actually one of the few filmmakers where I can watch all of her films with my husband, and so we're huge fans. Every film of hers, with the exception of her very first film, Rivers of Grass, which was filmed in Florida. Every other one has been filmed in the Northwest. She just has a love of this area and shooting in this area. And I really enjoyed this film. I actually surprised how much I liked it because I just wasn't sure. It's a movie about a cow. You think that's what it's about anyway, based on the poster. It's about these two men, and it's really a movie about male friendship, which is actually the also the subject of one of her early acclaimed films, Old Joy. Although that one was about a tension-filmed friendship, a friendship where two people had gone, as people do as they get older, gone in different paths, and then you find out you don't have as much in common. This one is about two men coming together who seem like they wouldn't have as much in common. One, the character of Cookie, he's kind of this like shy, sort of awkward guy who happens to be in this like rugged Northwest area, but he's really not kind of the typical frontiersman, if you would. He's a little too kind. And I kind of think about like what would it be like you meet a sensitive guy of today and you put him in that time period where guys are just like fighting and groveling and killing meat, and you put this guy in that scenario, and his name is Cookie because he was the cook, but he's not even very good at that, but he is good at making biscuits. And then the character of Lou, King Lou, played by a wonderful actor who I'd never seen before, Orion Lee. And he's really he's actually just kind of separated from everyone else because he's Asian. And so people put him aside, and so they come together to kind of, try to persevere and make some money off of this prize dairy cow. But it's really in a way less about that plot than it is about their friendship, and also just showing the rhythms of the frontier life. It says when Oregon was still a territory. So she shows there's a lot of scenes of people foraging for food in the forest,
Yeah.
which I know doesn't sound super exciting, but I just thought, I was fascinating to me because I thought this is how people in Oregon would have lived then. You don't see it in movies. People like picking up berries and things and thinking, can I eat this? So we're watching them as they discover the beauty that is Oregon. And so of course, us as Oregonians, I really appreciated that element. And then just the way everyone was living. It took me a minute to realize that there was a famous actor in this movie in a very small part. His character title was just Man with a Raven. Did you recognize him, Brian? The
Oh,
actor from MASH, Jean Auberjois. I can't remember how to say his name. He has a French last name, but he was a very famous actor, and he played the man with the raven, and he had the bird on his shoulder, and he was just as they were passing through town. And there's some good actors in very small parts in this movie. Leah Shawkat's in the very, very beginning of the movie as someone who makes a discovery in present day Oregon. And Lily Gladstone, who was in Kelly Reichardt's earlier film, Certain Women, comes in as the chief's wife. We also see lots of people. You also see, one of the other things I love about this movie is often when you see period pieces, quote unquote, you just think, oh, it's just white people, right? And here, when they go into the village, you see everyone. You see how diverse Oregon was right at its founding, right? Even before its founding as a quote unquote state, right? So, because there's the different tribes that are there and the different trappers and the travelers coming through the area. Fascinating.
I'm sorry. While you were talking, since we're on a laptop, that guy, that actor you talked about, he was also. I know him from the guy as Ben and Benson.
Benson, yeah, yeah. It's Renee Auberjois, right? Not John, yeah.
I immediately recognized him. When you said Match, I thought the television show, and I was like, what? Yeah, he was in the movie, obviously. He was
Yeah.
yeah. That was just watching this with my roommate, my mom at this time. She's staying with me. I couldn't help. I just kept telling her over and over, I wouldn't last 2 minutes. I would not last 2 days. It's cold. It's wet. You're having to go out there and forage. I'd eat the wrong mushroom, whatever it is. It's not going to last. But it was really interesting that how when they go and stealing the milk is very tense, Phil. But then when he's invited to go over there and cook for the man that owns the cow, and then it's over there, and the cow immediately nuzzles up to him because it recognized the man that's going in the middle of the night and milking him. That immediately everyone kind of looks like, oh, he's taking a liking to you, and it was, at that moment you're like, oh no, step away, push the cow away, don't don't be nice to the cow, or push the cow away. And so there's nice little moments like that, that any other film, would beat it over the head, and someone would point it out later on and say, oh, it sure does.
It's
take
very subtle, yeah. Her films are very subtle. This is not her masterpiece. That's still Wendy and Lucy is her best film. That's her 5-star masterpiece, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But that's actually a harder movie to watch than this because it's a girl and her dog. And if you're a dog lover, that movie's hard to watch. I get choked up just talking about it. And Meek's Cutoff is also a fantastic film, and Certain Women. But I've thoroughly enjoyed this and definitely can recommend it. So.
Yeah, it was also another collaborator was with Jonathan Raymond. That's based on his book. He's actually done a lot of screenplays for her. So that's really interesting. She has a group that she works with, a lot of the same actors, I think a lot of times.
I know. I think this is one of the first ones I've seen in a while without Michelle Williams. She's been in almost all of her films. So, yeah.
So that's definitely a recommend. It was a 3.5-star film for me. It's a beautiful looking film as well. Her films are always interesting looking. Okay, so we'll move on to our next film, which is a small independent film you may not have heard of. I know it wasn't on my radar right away. Once Upon a River, which is directed by, Haroula, Rose. Haroula Rose. This is about a young woman who goes on an unexpected odyssey in the Stark River to find her estranged mother after her father is killed in a tragic accident. And the first thing I want to talk about this film is Margot Crane stars in this film. She doesn't have any other credits and is absolutely fantastic because she is in practically every scene of this film. And she really holds down the entire picture as this young woman who is assaulted in the very beginning of the film. And you see her going through this journey down this river trying to find her mother, introducing her to several different characters and different people throughout her life, someone that she She falls in love with another gentleman that she's taking care of and that's trying to take care of her. And this film really just hooks you from the very beginning, and you can't help but really care about this young character, this young woman, and follow her through all this, the different journeys that she has. It's a very interesting film, and it's a good looking film as well. And I was really impressed because I wasn't familiar with this director, who hadn't made many other things, and certainly this actress, who is fantastic in this movie. And so I really want to thank Angela there for pointing this one out and putting it on the show. Otherwise, I don't know if I would have seen this one originally. I don't know if it was on my list to see the
Yeah, it's one of the nice things about the virtual screenings being offered from our local independent theater, as you mentioned at the beginning of the movie. Sometimes I'll just scroll through, and often I try to go for the things, as we all do, that are either directors I recognize, actors I recognize. This one I didn't know either, but I thought, but it said coming of age story, so me and that. But also, I was struck because it said it was a Native American character, and we don't see a lot of that on film. And you and I have been talking a lot this year, and every year we try to think about representation on Real Film Snobs and making sure we highlight films by diverse voices. But I think more so than ever, we're really trying to do that. And so I thought, well, we should give it a chance and watch it. And yeah, I think the filmmaker, when I looked her up, she seemed like she'd done a lot of TV. And unfortunately, I think you can tell that from the movie a little bit. I can recommend the movie, but just barely. It's 3-star film for me, mainly because of the lead performance. I thought the young woman who played Margot, I'm going to butcher her name, probably Kennedy Della Serna, maybe. I'm probably butchering that.
I'm sorry, did I get her name wrong? I thought I had. Oh, I thought I had her name wrong. Or I thought I had her name right. Excuse me. Is that her character's name? I got that wrong.
Her character's name is Margot Crane. Yeah.
Oh,
She it's her first film, and like another film we reviewed on an earlier show, Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, where it was an amazing performance and she's in every scene of the movie, that young woman.
yeah.
This is another one where you would never know to watch it that she'd never been in a movie before. Just an amazing lead performance, and I loved the journey she goes on and all the beautiful scenery you see. It's supposed to take place in Michigan in the 1970s. I think the parts I didn't like about it, it's episodic as she meets these different people along her journey. And some of it, particularly the tryst she has with the young man that she meets in the forest, just seems a little, I could tell this was, it was based on, like, I think a novel, and it has that feeling sort of in a bad way of a made for TV movie at times. She does strike up a friendship with an old chain smoker guy who lives isolated, and he's actually quite good, and that is one of my favorite parts of the movie. He's this cranky guy who has emphysema, and he's just smoking away, and his kids have kind of abandoned him, and they strike up a friendship, and I liked that dynamic. But the whole, like, gotta meet my mother, and some of the stuff that happens with her father at the beginning felt very soap opera-y, but I'm still glad I saw it. And like you mentioned, there's some great photography, and another lead performance from an actress I hope we don't see the last of.
Well, when I saw that, I kept thinking about the young actress whose name I don't remember from Roma, because we haven't seen her since.
Oh yeah.
Was that or Maria Falling from Grace, the young girl that was smuggling the drugs that was nominated for an Academy Award? Haven't seen her since either. So that's really sad. The guy who played Smoke, sorry, again, I'm here by my IMDb. The guy who played Smoke was John Ashton. Angela, I'm
He's been
surprised.
in other things.
He was in Beverly Hills Cop
Yeah.
1 and 2. He was one of the cops there. I know how much you love Eddie Murphy movies.
Yeah, and I like the Beverly Hills Cop movies. Yeah, I know he's been in a lot. And he's an old guy now. He's an old codger, but he's good in this movie. Yeah. It's a little sad because at first I was like, oh, I love this guy. And then I thought, oh, he's one of the only white actors in this movie. And here he is, one of the best characters. But he's also one of the only professional, quote unquote, actor. I mean, he's a name actor that they have. So there is that too. But his character is pretty funny.
The romance that she had on the river there. I thought they had good chemistry, and I could see how that would happen.
Yeah, but you think it just like takes off, like, oh, see ya. It's like,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I just kept trying to remind myself, well, it's supposed to be 1970, so things were just.
Have you not met a man before? You have a
Yeah,
husband.
a romantic tryst, and I think more from her perspective after what she did, the trauma she just gone through, she's just gonna shack up with some guy she meets in the forest.
Yeah, that was a little odd. Well, yeah, it was.
I don't know. That was odd to me.
It
It
wasn't
just seemed a
necessarily.
little contrived.
I don't think it was assault on her end of this situation, but it's interesting.
Anyway, it's
You know
a
what?
movie. It's a movie.
I didn't realize it was taken during the 70s. I just thought she didn't have a phone, the cell phone. So, because it was, some dated, well, I didn't think it was dated fashion either. I was like, oh, Oh,
And I looked up a little bit about it. I mentioned it was based on a novel, and that's where it said 1970. So I don't know if I would have known. There was nothing in there. She's not wearing bell bottoms or anything to make you think that.
yeah, and it's sad that on the IMDb page, her name, you have to search for her name. She's not one of the first ones listed. That's one of the things I messed up on, was getting her name wrong. So that's too bad. I really do hope to see more of her. I thought maybe all three of those actresses could do another movie together with Kelly Reichardt. That would be great.
You never know. Okay, so we'll move on. And going out of independent film land and going into big star land, the film world lost an icon recently with Sean Connery. And so we thought we'd devote a special segment to him here on Real Film Snobs. He was born in 1930 and then just recently passed away. But that's a good long life. He was not a spring chicken. So, and he is an actor much beloved in my household. He's one of the top two probably that I watched the most films of growing up, because for my dad it was Walter Matthau and Sean Connery. So we had to watch all of their films no matter what they were. So I've seen everything probably at some point or another.
They never made a movie together.
No, there was no. If they had, oh man, that would have been on repeat in my household. That would have been weird though. Well, actually not too, because Sean Connery had some comedic timing. He could do comedy, so I could see him, sparring with Matthau. So I'm going to start. We're going to just kind of talk through some of our favorite films, but we're going to talk about starting off, of course, with one of the classic Bond films. Not his first Bond film, but the one that's the most highly regarded. Although I also have a soft spot From Russia with Love myself, which is the one he did before Goldfinger. But Goldfinger is in some ways the quintessential Bond movie. It's where we see the Aston Martin for the first time. It's where the Martini makes its first appearance. A lot of the big famous Bond tropes that became things we associate now with Bond happened in Goldfinger for the first time. And interestingly enough, the creator of James Bond the creator of the books of James Bond did not like Sean Connery and did not want him for the role. He thought he was too brutish and too much of an action type guy. So, which is interesting because some of us, my dad and myself included, think he is Bond to us. Definitely prefer him over Moore and Pierce Brosnan. But I think you, Brian, are more of a Roger Moore fan. You're in the minority there.
No, I'm not in the minority. It's whoever you saw first usually is your favorite Bond, and so I prefer the comedy timing of Roger Moore. But I mean, Sean Connery is the one they're all judged against. He really solidified that iconic character, and with that character, certainly, you had to be a tough guy. You had to be very, you had to have comedic timing, certainly, and he did have it there. And of course, he had to be suave and debonair, and you got to think when Bond was created that men were actually tied to opposites, and so it was kind of romanticize this wonderful exotic life of having all of these women and being able to license to kill. And he embodied that very well. He looked good in a suit. He was a good looking guy. Guys wanted to be him. Women wanted to be with him. That was what the Bond was supposed to be. And, you think you miscast that and it doesn't work. And, what, 27 movies, 30 movies, some odd? I mean, we just had a 50th anniversary pass by for that iconic character. But he was able to take that into other roles where he played a Chicago cop in Untouchables. He played a Russian submarine captain in Hunt for Red October. All of his roles with a Scottish accent, which is impressive.
There you go. And you mentioned, and he did some non-Bond films. The Man Who Would Be King is one of his most famous ones from 1975. I know that's one you wanted to mention. He has a very small role in Time Bandits in 1981,
Yes.
but it's actually a really memorable part of that film. And, yeah, very.
Yeah, he's fantastic in that because you just needed to have someone that could establish, that character and have that command of being a king. And he kind of takes the kid under his wing. I love that part of that movie. I actually enjoy that portion of that film because that was something where I wish the kid would have stayed. I'm like, oh, this is a good happy life. Have him stay there. And so I always think of Sean Connery, there.
One of my favorites of his, I was going to say in the later part of his career, it's actually not that late considering how long he lived, but Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade from 1989, which is actually one of my favorite Indiana Jones movies, because you have that wonderful pairing, and he and Harrison Ford have such great, and when I talked about his comedic timing, this is a movie where you really see it. He sparred so well with Harrison Ford in that film, and they have such great chemistry together. Despite the Scottish accent. And they kind of wrote that into the script, why his dad has that accent or whatever. But we don't care. It's Sean Connery. He always has that brogue.
Yeah. Yeah, and he has great chemistry. Yes, like you said with Harrison Ford and the comedy, especially when they're tied together back to back in chairs. I always think of that scene whenever I think of him in there, and calling him Junior because Indy was the name of the dog. The Untouchables, though, I really like that because he's bringing that sense of
So
toughness
good.
that Sean, that he had, and got to play the side character. He won the Academy Award for that one, rightfully so. He was really good in that role. It was kind of an accumulation for his career as well. But I really enjoyed him in that role because he brought that team, that toughness, and like he said, you what is it now? You bring a knife, you bring a gun, they put a man on the hospital, you put one in the morgue. I think is what the line was, and memorably said by him. So yeah, it's a shame he retired. He had a terrible manager and could not pick a script. He turned down a lot of great roles. Lord of the Rings, he was supposed to play the Ian McKellen role, the Gandalf, and didn't understand some of the roles, a lot of roles that he famously turned down, unfortunately. But he still made a wonderful career out of it and had a lot of hits that able to sustain him through his career. He was always a box office draw. I mean, even towards the end. So he bowed out at the rightful time, and I hope he enjoyed his retirement there. And he certainly has a legacy to lead.
Yeah, lived a good long life. So
Yeah.
that's what we would wish for everyone. Oh, okay. So I think that's it. I think the next one is me still. Okay. And this is her fresh picks. These are critically acclaimed films from this year that we are, well, usually I say, oh, we're catching up on because we missed them in the theaters, but we're missing everything in the theaters right now. So this is the 40-year-old version, which is a film I actually first read about when it showed at Sundance. And I was reading Variety's Sundance coverage as they were rolling out with the films they were saying, you got to see this. And I wasn't at Sundance, but our friend Brian Hart was. And I was texting Brian Hart with ideas on which ones he should see, so he would see something else other than documentaries, so that I could live vicariously through him. He loves documentaries, and I do too, but not as much as him. And so there were certain films I really pushed him to see, and this was one of them. And this is a film written, directed, and starring by Radha Blank, and it's sort of semi-autobiographical, and it's about an African-American woman in New York City who is a playwright, but her playwriting career is not going so well. She's teaching students at the moment, and she's not able to get her plays off the ground. So what does she do? She turns to hip hop, and she starts emceeing and recording some of her own songs under her moniker Rodimus Prime, which I love, by the way. So I watched this movie, didn't know what to expect. The 40-year-old version, when I first told you, I think, Brian, that I was watching this, you're like, oh, that's such a great comedy. I'm like, no, different movie.
I thought it was a typo.
I know, it's a play on, yeah, I know, but it's me texting, not you. So, so, I'm not familiar with her work. I think she's known as a playwright in New York. But I loved this movie. I thought the photography, she goes with this kind of black and white look, which I really, of course, love seeing New York in black and white. And one of the things I like about this film when we talk about representation is that she is kind of in this weird, there's some great scenes where she's getting rejected by both sides of the theater world in New York. The white theater guy tells her, oh, your stuff isn't, it's just not, you need a white person for the white audience to identify with. And he's trying to tell her what he thinks people need from her work. And then she goes to this underground theater. And they're doing I forgot, do you remember what they called it in the film, Brian? She had a name for it.
No, I don't remember that.
I can't remember if it was like poverty porn or something else, but they had a term.
Oh, yeah, poverty porn. Yeah, that's exactly what it's called.
But they wanted this other sort of depiction of Black lives that she's like, well, that isn't my truth. That doesn't speak to me.
Yeah.
I don't, and so she's like trying to write what she identifies with, and everyone's telling her it's not Black enough, it's not this enough, it's not that enough. So she just gets fed up and starts rapping. And she strikes up a friendship with a character named Dee, played by Oswin Benjamin, who I thought was fantastic. He's a hip hop producer who just produces out of his house. And he's so perfectly cast. When my husband and I are watching it, and the first time when she just comes in, he just looks so bored because people are just coming in and he's recording them and he's just getting paid, record people. People are doing stuff. He doesn't care, and she's asking him, is this okay? Oh, this okay? And he had great comedic timing. So I really enjoyed this movie. I'm anxious to hear what you think.
Yeah, when it opened up, this writer and director, she had worked a lot on Spike Lee's She's Gotta Have a TV show. So immediately, as soon as it starts with the Spike Lee-esque opening, I immediately flash back to Last Black Man in San Francisco and think, okay, don't hold it up to the high standard or you're going to ruin this whole thing. But I enjoyed her. She is so funny. And they have the little swipes that go to other jokes and that come back to, when she makes a comment, it'll cut back to something and then come back to her. And we've kind of seen this story before, but I really enjoyed her performance. She carried the whole thing, and she is so funny. Her best friend, who comes in and who's her manager, kind of her manager, who's gay, is very funny as well. And they have great comic timing together. Some of the jokes are a little obvious here and there, but with the struggle though, what she's doing and what she ends up actually producing is really painful. Though 10, 20 years ago, that'd have been just fine. That'd have been great. But when Hollywood, in the 80s, made that one black movie, and if you weren't in it, well, then you had to wait.
Yeah.
And
But watching it now, oh, yeah.
yeah, I can totally appreciate it, and it's a fine film. Yeah, I did enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm giving it 3.5. I don't think it's a 4-star film, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And I didn't expect to be as funny as it is. So I would say give it a chance because, based on the look, I thought it was going to be much darker than it was, and it's very funny. So, okay, I know we need to move on. So go ahead.
Yeah, so we'll move on to our next distinguished classic. This was a hard to find film for so many years, and they finally found a copy of it or print of it in Germany. It's always in Europe in some closet. God bless them. Well, won't make that joke. So this is his distinguished classic. It's The Whole Shooting Match from 1979. This is directed by Pennell. And this tells the story of two best friends who are trying to get rich with different schemes and plans they have with flying squirrel farms or frog farms or different ideas. And they finally come up with a cleaning that combines a mop with with the polisher. It's rather contrived. Usually when it comes to these small independent films, especially the black and white ones that sit and have people have a conversation, that's all the movie is, Stranger Than Paradise, usually tends to drive me nuts. But with this one, I actually really enjoyed. I enjoyed the timing between the chemistry between the two and their conversations and their little adventure here trying to get rich, which doesn't always work out.
No, I agree. I actually enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I was worried too. I thought it was going to be like Jim. It does have a Jim Jarmusch-ish feel, but instead of the characters being ironic hipsters, they're actually just like well-meaning. I mean, they're sort of nice guys, but they're working class guys that are really, really actually struggling and really trying to make something. And they have a genuine friendship, which you really felt. And so I liked that aspect of it. And I thought some of the photography was really interesting. It's shot in Texas, and there's a scene where they're driving at night, and you can tell the car isn't moving. It's a very shoestring budget. But it's a great way to see how you can make an independent film and still make something that's really interesting. And as far as I know, this filmmaker never made another movie.
No, he did. He actually made a few other films.
Oh, he did. Okay.
One of high regard as well, and I didn't have write it down the name of that one here.
Hard one to find though. We've got this on DVD. I found it on Netflix DVD. So.
Yeah. Now they finally are actually able to get that movie out. So to wrap things up, Angela and I can highly recommend First Cow. Weird sentence to say, as well as Once Upon a River. Sean Connery, certainly rest in peace. We can recommend again The 40-Year-Old Virgin, as well as The Whole Shooting Match. There is my alarm going off that our time is up. As always, I want to thank everyone for watching. Check out our previous episodes at realfilmsnobs.com for other reviews as well. Subscribe to YouTube, follow Twitter, listen on KMUZ, watch in Salem, Corvallis, as well as Silverton. We want to thank our amazing sponsors, our hardworking one-man crew, Brad there, as well as Brian Hart, I know is working on our show, and my wonderful co-host. For you out there, have a great day and great movie.
Goodbye.